Hello and welcome everybody to the first episode of Cultivating Curiosity. I am your host, the humble dungeon master, Bildo himself, and I have with me CinderBlocksally,
Hello.
actual play performer for Unbalanced Encounters, stage performer, writer, homebrew guru, teacher, content creator, and overall goofy goober. What's next for CinderBlocksally?
I'm streaming on Twitch now, and I'm going to be doing that for a couple months, maybe into the future. I'm not exactly sure yet. I don't have any massive projects on the horizon. One of the things that is, I think that at least for me as a content creator, is it's sort of just trying to keep the train going. I have a couple ideas for things I want to do, but they are mostly ideas right now, and they are not so much projects. They're just ideas.
For sure.
But a lot of what I'm doing right now is just making videos, making stupid advice videos, making stupid non-advice videos. That's about it. That's most of it.
Most of them are quality. I have seen some silly ones, but honestly, even like your throwaway videos, I'm like, fuck, that's so good. It was so silly and I loved it.
That's very, very kind of you.
I
Very kind of you.
I don't remember what it was. I watched one this morning and you just said some. Oh, it was the Remoraz one.
What did I say? I don't remember.
You were like, when the moon hits your eye, like.
Oh.
You were like, this is stupid.
Yeah, it was a good joke.
It really was.
Remoraz, they're so close. They're so similar.
It's very close. And I love the Remoraz as a creature. I use it all the time in all of my ice settings.
Yeah, it's a good monster for sure. They're some of the more cinematic monsters, like just that giant, crazy, flaming ice caterpillar that explodes out of the ice. It's like Tremors, but on fire.
Oh yeah,
and the way they work is they're so powerful, but they only get the one attack. So it's always like this. It leads to these. They're actually not that hard to get rid of or to handle because of how shitty their action economy is, but it makes it so that their turns are always such a spectacle because that one hit is going to be devastating if it lands.
I know the encounter that I always run has like hatchlings, like there are eggs and then babies. Mm-hmm. So people have to worry about that dilemma. So there are three pools, and one of them has eggs, one of them has hatchlings, and the other one has the adults, right? So they kill the adults, and they're like, oh my god, there are babies over there. But like, you can't keep them. They're Remoraz.
No, I'm not. They're also like the baby Remoraz. They're still like the size of horses.
Yeah,
like,
they're still pretty big.
They're not baby size. They're still giant, and they're also really not baby. Like they're insects.
They have stat blocks.
Are they really? Are they really babies? Yeah. Like they're more just like they're more stage one. You know,
that does make more sense.
I've had two groups try to do that before. Actually, one I handled well, one I handled poorly. But that's the nature of the game.
I really would like to know how you handled it poorly.
I handled it poorly by I basically just created a circumstance for them keeping it being very inconvenient and like I let them do it. I let them do it, but I didn't give them enough power to make it fun. So I created a situation where they were just getting disappointed and frustrated with me.
For sure. I've made that exact same situation before in past games where I'm like, yeah, sure, you can have this crazy ooze creature as a pet, and like, yeah, they just get frustrated and mad.
Yeah, because they want to do all the cool stuff, and it's if you say you can have the cool pet, they feel like I should be able to do the cool stuff, and they're kind of right. So the way that I handled it when I think I did a good job was I did let them have a pet purple worm baby, and I basically made it very easy for them to train it. And they realized it was very food motivated. So there was maybe 3 or 4 sessions where they just had a legit awesome pet purple worm that they could throw food to make it go places and to smash through walls or to attack people. But the issue became I had it just never not be hungry and keep growing to the point where the adventure sort of turned into a side quest of we need to get this thing somewhere where we can release it into the wild where we don't have to fight it and it won't kill everybody.
I mean, because eventually you have a purple worm and you're supposed to kill those things. I'm pretty sure that's like the adventure.
You don't have to. You're not. Yeah. I mean, it depends on what they're up to. But yeah, it's a big scary monster that's going to eat everything, including your horses and your friends. Like it's not easy to make those things a pet.
I love the idea that eventually they're just like, oh no, we've created a real problem here. Okay, We should
Yeah,
not have
it
fed
ended
this
up
thing
being
so
really
well.
fun. Yeah, it was. It was. That's why I felt like I did a good job because they got to have that satisfaction of having a pet purple worm to a certain extent. But it wasn't a situation of me trying to convince them that they shouldn't have this pet. It was them coming to the realization that having this pet would mean they would have to compromise so much of the rest of their character's existence in order to make it work. Like they basically have to move out of the city they were living in and figure out how to like they would need to figure out how to like have a ranch for it, and that would be like become the game to a certain extent. Yeah, that's a good idea. I've never done that. I've done a cockatrice ranch before.
That's pretty great. I've had a thing where, because I run like Crown of Candy games, so some of the stuff gets silly. So I have
Mm-hmm.
someone who's from a peep ranch where they raise peeps, and I just pretty much turn them into chocobos. They just were like peep jousters. That was their whole like community was around that.
That's great. Peep jousters is very funny.
Yeah. She was like a fondant warrior, very Aztec flavored. It was pretty great.
People love Crown of Candy. I've still only listened to a tiny bit of it, but everyone that I know that has listened to it are they love it so much.
So it's really, really good. Did you like Game of Thrones?
I mean, I know the gimmick. It's Game of Thrones
Yeah.
candy.
Well, I mean, they
Um,
say that, but then like it's all about execution, right? Because you're like, oh, this is fun and happy, and then like episode 3, you're like, oh my god, what the
yeah.
fuck is happening? Anyways, what initially drew you into the world of D&D? How has that first impression shifted now that you're deeply involved in the community?
What first drew me into D&D is that I was doing theater stuff in Baltimore with some wonderful people who were a bunch of like punk rock, heavy metal folk, and they all played D&D, and they invited me to play D&D, or some of them did, and then I played D&D with them for a couple months, and then I moved to a new city, and then after living in that new city for a little while, I wanted to start playing D&D again, and then I didn't have anybody to play with. Nobody knew how to play D&D, so I started running D&D for my friends. Because you got to be the dungeon master if you don't have a dungeon master, and no one knows how to play. And I think that my initial D&D relationship was like I am like a kid at like the Franklin Institute. I'm like the Please Touch Museum. I'm at a place where I just want to run around and push every button, throw everything at everything else. It's like very sandbox oriented in a way where I genuinely didn't think about character or plot or anything like that.
For sure.
I just liked the idea that I was playing a fantasy game where the rules were limited by imagination and that the sort of consequences of my actions were dictated by a dungeon master and dice. I thought that was very cool. So I leaned hard into that. My first character was a warlock, and he died because he started to take the faces of people that he killed and turn them into a mask, and he would just wear that around town. It was very edgy, but then he got arrested for doing that.
Sounds
basically,
very edgy, yeah.
um,
Like
but
not
he was fun.
magically, he just like did it as a taxidermy skill.
Yeah. No, it wasn't magical.
I love
He
that.
went to a leather shop to get it done. Actually,
Hey,
um,
excuse me, can you give me a price on this? Yeah,
that was
sure. Let me see the
literally
leather.
it's literally what happened. Literally what happened. Um, and but he was a fun character for the 3 or 4 sessions that he was alive. But yeah, I guess now that I'm more embedded in the sauce, as it were, I think I spend a lot of time encouraging people to try to use D&D as like a way to do something that is a little bit closer to collaborative storytelling and a little bit farther away from like Goat Simulator in terms of what the gameplay is. But I still acknowledge that the Goat Simulator gameplay is a lot of fun if people want to do it. But most of the things that I suggest, most of the stuff that I think about is less focused on lol random bonanza type stuff and more focused on how do we keep a group of players engaged in a story and make them feel like it is their story. It's a little headier in a way that is, I think, as much obnoxious as it is anything else, but it is it is where my head usually leans more these days.
No, I know that your content in particular drew me in because it was not only thought provoking, but it was wholesome in a way that I really vibe with. You're never
Wholesome.
you're never gross. Does that make
No,
sense?
I don't like being gross. That's not
Yeah.
true. I do like being gross. I like being gross in very specific ways, though.
Yeah, like how little kids are gross though, right?
Yeah, yeah. Like I like farts. I
Yeah.
like boogers.
A
I like
good
picking
butt
my
is
nose.
funny. Um,
Yeah, yeah. I like a poop joke.
yeah.
I like weird noises sometimes, depending on the noise.
I think
Uh,
that's one of your superpowers that I envy the most is your ability to call out cringe. Instantly see like, oh, that's cringy
oh yeah, but that's just
immediately.
because I'm old and I've lived a life of fear.
No, but
If you
I'm
live,
old, so
yeah, but did you live a life of fear?
no, no, I
There you
didn't.
go. There you go. Your defense mechanisms aren't as high. Your
Okay.
radar is not as attuned because it comes from a life of I think being cringe and looking back with deep remorse.
Well, I have lots of that, so I think I'll get there.
But I have very little patience for the anime protagonist vibes that I think a lot of people exude in our space. There's a lot of miladies out there.
What
Yeah.
has been the most rewarding aspect of creating and sharing D&D content with the community?
The most rewarding aspect?
Yes.
Well, I had kind of the other night I got hit with a double whammy, which was kind of strange, where I got both sides of the equation pretty nice. I got two messages in the same night. One message was from somebody who is in the Middle East, and they were basically saying that like all of the war stuff happening right now is like making life, almost unlivable and really stressful and very panicky, and that my little D&D stream is a little bit of joy that they can get amongst that, which is fucking crazy. That's insane. That like somebody across the world who's like living in a war zone is able to enjoy the stream and getting something out of it. They basically were like their power keeps going out, so they can't. They were sending me a message basically being like, I don't know if I'm going to make it a stream because my power keeps going out, but I want to say that like it means a lot that you do this. It's like Jesus, that's insane because you're it's just me talking about D&D on the internet. So that was pretty empowering and rewarding feeling. But that same night, I got an email from somebody that was like, I don't know, maybe 5 times as long. Like that email, that the first message I got was a paragraph. I got another message that was like 6 or 7 paragraphs. That was basically somebody explaining how they aren't going to submit homebrew for me again because I made them feel bad, and that they just didn't even want me to respond to the message. They just wanted me to know how that I made them feel bad. And that made me feel pretty bad. I was like, oh, that sucks. Cause that's like the opposite of what I want to do. So there's a little bit, so that was it was a moment of like, oh, this is awesome. And then immediately humbled. Be like, all right, I still have room to improve. Still have room to improve. But no, I think probably what I'm proudest of is I think that to a small extent, I have been able to cater people into figuring out ways that they want to improve as writers, which I think is a really fun thing to do and is a hard thing to do, and a lot of people don't think about. And it's nice to be talking to people that are interested in D&D, interested in game design, interested in writing, and creating a space where, in theory, they can somewhat comfortably express themselves as writers and get critiqued in ways that they can legit grow. Although, sometimes it's a little harsh. Not everybody loves that, but that's okay. But yeah, that's probably what I'm proud of. That and all the poop jokes. Anytime I made a couple. You mentioned the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie. I think the best videos I make are the stupid ones. So I'm proud of all of the videos all the nonsense videos I make. I'm pretty proud of.
No, they're very quality nonsense, which is hard to come by in this day and age. So many
Mm.
people have bullshit nonsense, and I just don't want to see it.
All right. Well, I appreciate that.
Uh, no, some of the I'm realizing some of the sillier things that you do are some of the best content you put out. Like, I, as a
Oh, I
streamer,
know.
someone who streamed for many years, am watching like the mistakes that I made and how you are seamlessly avoiding all of them. It's
What
amazing.
what do you even talk? What mistakes? What are you talking about?
I mean, I just got into a
Curious.
comfort zone where I was just dull and rhythmless, where I just kept doing the same thing over and over, and like I was just grinding, right? I wasn't entertaining. I was just doing the same thing because it was what I was supposed to do.
Well, but I'm gonna push back on that, because if you said you weren't entertaining, you were just grinding, then I don't think you were doing what you're supposed to do. Because I think that the way that you actually improve as a content creator for growth is you grind. You just have to figure out how to do it in a way that's entertaining. But like the people that explode, the people that really have dramatic growth, they don't do a big variety of things. Doing a big variety of things is a harder way to succeed in the space of content creation than doing the same thing every single time. If you do the same thing every single time, as long as that thing is entertaining, you're going to grow. I think the issue, though, is figuring out, what does that mean? What does that mean to make something that is genuinely entertaining and unique that you can replicate? And I think that the issue that sounds like that you were facing, and I think honestly a lot of people face, is that they are way more focused on the I need to grind than I need to make sure my grind is entertaining. Because there's a million people out there making stuff, and most of them are really, sort of the same.
Kind of mid.
Not even mid, it's just the same. Like, how do you stand? It doesn't even matter if it's good, if it's the same as 1,000 other people. How do you stand out? What do you do to make yourself distinct? What do you do? I talk about this on stream all the time. Like, there's this assumption that people have that strangers care about you. And maybe they do in like a humanitarian sense, but as an entertainer, they don't give a fuck. So you really need to earn their attention. And that is a thing that I think a lot of people don't think about. I used to, and I still do, like, peruse like the Twitch subreddit, and just like read people like asking questions and telling stories and whatever. And the amount of people that are like, I think I shouldn't stream anymore. I don't know. I've been streaming for a year and I only really ever have this many viewers. I don't comment on any of those posts, but the thing that I want to ask is, what are you doing? Like, are you just sitting playing a video game talking? Like, you need to that's not selling yourself. You need to sell yourself. You need to figure out a gimmick. You need to figure out what you're doing that's entertaining, because that is the talking and playing a video game can be entertaining, but you're rolling the dice way more than you need to. You can much more confidently grow as a creator if you come up with a unique gimmick or a bit or something that you could say in an elevator to get someone's attention, like something that you could express the idea and have a stranger who maybe even doesn't even know what Twitch is be like, oh, that's kind of neat, in like 30 seconds. If you could do that, you might have a good idea. But if you're just talking about, like, I talk to other content creators a little bit. I don't know that many, but one thing that I think happens a lot is people ask content creators, and this happens to me occasionally. People are like, hey, how do I grow on Twitch? How do I become a streamer? How do I do this? And part of me wants to be like, yo, I haven't even succeeded at this yet, so I'm the wrong person to ask. But if I do talk to them, usually if there's somebody like in the Discord or somebody that's like in my community a little bit, so they're not just a totally rando, I usually say, what are you doing? Like, if you're just sitting playing video games, that's not enough. It might have been enough, 10 years ago when Twitch was kind of new, but it's definitely not enough now. So you need to be, you need to decide, either I'm okay with not exploding unless it's totally random, or I need to have a game plan that is very self-aware, where I'm looking at what I'm capable of, being realistic about what I'm bringing to the table compared to what other people are bringing to the table, and trying to figure out how to do that in a way that makes me genuinely stand out. Otherwise, you're just treading water. So yeah, the random stuff that I do, I don't know if it is better for the algorithm, but it's better for me emotionally, which is why I do it. Because I don't love the fact, I'm very keenly aware of the fact that I'm very specifically a D&D content creator, and I don't always love that. So I feel like it's important to do random nonsense that I really enjoy, that has nothing to do with D&D, in order to, I don't know, feel like I'm putting at least part of my soul into this. I like my favorite streamer is Cardboard Cowboy. I don't know if you're familiar with him. But I think what makes his stream so amazing is that it feels like you're watching a show with like musical interludes and music videos and segments. It's crazy. So I want to have at least a little bit of that, but again, I'm very cognizant of my abilities and my resources, and I don't have the wherewithal or the knowledge or the tech to like set up a super elaborate music video or studio or even record any of that kind of stuff. And I'm certainly not a good enough musician to do that on my own, but I can figure out how to have my camera zoom in a lot and zoom out and look at a camera and make funny faces as I lip sync a song. And it sort of captures that vibe of like we are entering into a different sort of tone, different space, different rhythm for a little bit that feels a little bit more like this is a slightly larger production than just watching a guy play video games. So it can feel a little bit more like a show. That's a lot.
What is the most challenging piece of D&D content you've ever created, and why was it so demanding?
Challenging in what way? Challenging emotionally or challenging like this is a hard fight?
I'm thinking emotionally, not like hard fight, but like maybe you tackled a project or a campaign that you didn't realize the scope of it when you started, or something like that.
Oh, like it was hard for me.
Yes, difficult.
Oh.
And this could be D&D content, or maybe like video content, or just the most difficult thing you've ever created, the most challenging.
The most time consuming was a video that I have on my YouTube channel called Become God. And it's just the editing of it took 1,000 years. It took like 3 weeks because if you ever watch it, it's like a clip change every second or something like that.
No, for sure, it is a quality video.
So that's probably took the most time. I think the biggest emotional challenge was probably either with the first D&D game I ran and needing to figure out how to navigate moving from a group of 8 players to 2 groups of 4 players, which was hard because nobody really wanted to switch, but we really needed it. And then there was also just a couple times where it's like I have close friends that I played D&D with sometimes, and I stopped playing D&D with after a little while, just because they weren't. It didn't work out. They weren't
not good table vibes.
Not good table vibes, but good friend vibes. Good friend vibes. So that's a strange thing to encounter. It hasn't happened a lot, but a couple times.
It is a weird one though. I've had that happen with some friends, and then they're just like a real shitlord in game. How do your real life experiences seep into the narratives or characters you create?
Yeah, I think that maybe musically, like I use a lot of music that I like in the real world in my campaigns. I don't really put a lot of my real life into my games. And I know that people put themselves into their games. I think the things that affect it the most are probably, I guess, the movies and the TV shows that I watch.
Yeah, pop culture, media.
Yeah, I take inspiration from shows and movies I watch sometimes, but my D&D games are usually really off the wall. Like I don't plan a lot. I spend a lot of time building a world and coming up with music for the world and helping players build their characters and thinking about the way that their characters sort of sit in the world. But when it comes to the actual game, I almost don't plan anymore at this point. Like I just sort of think about what we did last session and just sort of dive in.
You know what's funny is that more and more when I talk to like professional dungeon masters, that's kind of how it goes. Like I have a setting and you guys are in it, but the story I can't write because it is based off the character's actions, you know?
Yeah. I spend a lot of time thinking about what the consequences of the player's actions are in a larger scale of the world and try to make those feel real and try to make them feel earned, both in terms of good and bad. And if I have like a big moment coming up, like if they are found a treasure map and we finally get to where it is, where the X on the spot is, or they've been building up to fighting this big boss or something. I'll plan a little bit more then. Like, I want to make sure that the set pieces feel like set pieces, and that the dungeons feel thoughtful, and that the the puzzles and the strategies of the monsters and the fights all feel kind of dynamic. But in terms of like the action of the story, I don't have a plan usually. I trust my players to drive the story forward, except for in the very specific circumstances where they essentially have chosen a pretty narrow path and they need me to like just tell them what happens next, which does happen on occasion.
How do you approach incorporating player feedback into your content? Can you provide an example when this has significantly altered your creation?
Um, yeah, I had a player. This is a long time ago. I had a player once complain to me, and this was them. They weren't even saying it in a way where they were trying to be constructive. This was them just like genuinely complaining, but it was good feedback. They complained to me that they felt like there was always a problem. Like there's always a new threat, there's always a big scary monster, there's always something bad to be solved. And my initial thought was like, well, yeah, it's D&D. Like if there's not an adventure to go on, what's the point? But the what I took away from that in hindsight, and after thinking about it for a while, was that there was no like emotional downtime for the players. Everything was always high stakes all the time, and what they needed was they needed to have a moment to catch their breath, a moment to feel like they had victory, a moment to like let their characters have like just goofy downtime activities, and to potentially do adventures that are a little bit lower stakes. So it's like you're not always trying to save the world. You're not always battling the big scary thing. Sometimes you're just, going to the park or just like looking for treasure, and it can just be kind of simple. And that's something that I try to take to heart now, where I try really hard to make sure that the tone and the pace of my game is pretty dramatic and all over the place and not the same too much, so that everybody can have moments of high intensity, but also moments of calm and like recuperation.
For sure, like a spa episode.
Or even just like something where like the threat is not super high stakes. Like you can have a really fun, really intense adventure where the plot is there is a monster attacking a town, and that's like pretty low stakes in the world of D&D.
Yeah.
As opposed to like, okay, this thing is trying to take over the world. Now this thing is trying to take over the world. Now this thing's going to end reality. Now this thing's going to turn back time. Now this thing's going to destroy magic. Like the threat. If you keep the threat level too high all the time, it becomes a little bit tedious.
No, for sure. I think one of the first campaigns I ran from level 1 to 20 was kind of like that. It was a horror campaign to start with, so they did sign up for something kind of like that. But eventually, they made it out of the domain of dread, and like they came to an apocalyptic world that they kind of had to save. But like they couldn't, because it
Mm-hmm.
was like things happening, things beyond. Like if they would have figured out what was happening, maybe they could have stopped the Titan from emerging from the center of the planet, but like not likely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Uh, and for sure, looking back, I feel like I may have done them a disjustice by not at least providing some route to try to fix that. In the end, I actually took. We had a Circle of Spores druid that had to leave the game like
Mm-hmm.
a year or so before the campaign actually ended.
Mm-hmm.
So for the last session, I brought them back, and they had infused themselves with the Titan. So it was just them as the Titan. It's like, hey guys,
Oh, that's fun.
yeah, and they were like, why is this person back? What's happening? Bazarath, what's going on?
That's fun.
Yeah,
GD Bazarath always being a goof and a gaff.
always infecting the world with his spores.
Yeah, I mean, what else are you gonna do? You gonna not infect the world with your spores? That'd be madness.
Right? What is a memorable interaction you've had with the D&D community, and how has it shaped your relationship and influenced you as a creator?
I had a video do very well that talked about how I TPK'd a party, and it led to a lot of comments talking about how I was a bad dungeon master and that I was making the game not fun or being too harsh or had too much of an antagonistic relationship with the players. And then about 2 days later, I made a video about how a time I let a party basically kill a purple worm in a very unusual circumstance. And I got a lot of comments basically saying how I was too easy on the players and I was not a hard enough dungeon master and that I was making it so the consequences didn't matter. And getting those two such vitriolic and intense and like flowing responses and having them be so divergent back to back made me really set into stone the idea that you just don't need to listen to or care about what the comments are. Everybody's stupid.
Everyone's stupid.
Everybody's stupid and they are incredibly reactionary and you don't need to listen to what anybody says. Everybody's dumb.
I think that's what it is right there. You hit the nail on the head. Everyone's so reactionary. I find myself being so reactionary. I'm like, stop. Stop. If any sentence that I'm writing in a comment starts with I or me, I need to just stop and rethink it. You know? It's a very narcissistic vibe, which I have a bit of a problem with.
Hey, don't we all? That's why we're in the business. That's why we're in the business.
I have a constant need for gratification from thousands of people. So yeah, I do what I can.
I don't need it from thousands of people. I just need it from enough people that I feel special.
True. Like 5 really cool people.
Depends on the people, but yeah, 5's enough.
For sure. What project or piece of content are you most proud of?
Oh, probably the podcast that I'm on, Unbalanced Encounters.
And let's talk about that for a second. Unbalanced Encounters. Hey gang, Bildo here. I just want to take this moment to say thanks for being here. Maybe you could go check out Unbalanced Encounters, link in the doobly-doo. Or maybe you're watching this on YouTube. You're silly. You could have watched this weeks earlier. If you'd watched it on Patreon, you should go check it out. Or maybe you just want to play D&D. You should check out my Patreon. We could do that. Anyways, back to the show. You play Guard, right?
Yeah.
What was the motivation behind Guard? I know he's just a simple little guy, but
I think that in my head, I knew I was going to be playing this actual play. Unbalanced Encounters is a D&D actual play. It's a podcast. Go check it out. It's wonderful. And I am not super... I like role-playing a lot. I like, from the Dungeon Master perspective, I'm very good at sitting in a bunch of different people's emotions sort of rapidly in succession. But I'm also much more familiar with being a Dungeon Master than I am with being a player. And I think that I was a little bit hesitant to be too human of a character because I didn't want to have to sit in one character's emotions so prominently. And I think a way to navigate that in a way that felt more comfortable was to have that character be a giant ceramic robot that has feelings, but is like navigating having feelings for the first time. And it's sort of more of a exploration of identity for them than it is like they don't have I mean, maybe there's complications to their feelings, but everything is fairly simple. Everything is like, you know, he's a very goal-oriented character, and he's in a sort of constant state of trying to figure out the right way to accomplish the goal. And I like that headspace to sit in, and it allows me to sort of be emotionally distant, which I like. That's my preferred amount of emotion most of the time.
Sure. No, and it's like minimal humor, which I have a problem with. I'm very over the top most of the time. Guard is like the comedian of the group, but you would not expect that, right?
Mm.
But he does seem like a bit of the comic relief, which, I mean, I usually play a wizard, so I show up with this voice, and I have a big beard, and I'm like 3 foot nothing. I'm like, hey, gang, let's do some fucking magic. Everyone, they're like, oh, that's the comic relief. I understand that now. But like, Guard is so minimal in a way that I admire very much.
It's not delivery, it's DiGiorno.
That's true. I walked into that. Can you walk us through your content creation process? How do you evolve initial ideas into the final form that are content?
Well, what I used to do was I literally would just open up one of my monster manual books to a random page, and then I would read about a monster on it and challenge myself to make a video about that monster. That's what I used to do. Then it sort of turned into that plus a combination of trying to figure out how to build things in D&D without turning them into homebrew. So somebody would be like, I want to figure out how to be Spider-Man. Okay, like, can we make Spider-Man in D&D without homebrew? I'm trying to figure that out. Or minimal homebrew. And what my content is mostly now is I read comments that people leave on my videos, and I try to find ideas for videos in the comments. So either answering their questions or talking about something that relates to one of their questions. So, like, for example, I made a video. Somebody asked me in a video what I use for ambient music. So I think that's a pretty simple answer. You can just be like, I use this website. But it made me think about the fact that I used to, and I think I talked to you about this before, I used to use theme music for my games, where whenever I would start a D&D session, that campaign would have like a theme song. So when we transition from we're hanging out to we're playing D&D, I would play the theme song to like get everyone ready. But it was very hype and very exciting, and it was like a really cool idea. It ended up having like a pretty big impact on everybody's like vibe entering into the game. So I made my video response to that comment asking about ambience and ambient music. You know, I spent maybe 10 seconds of the video just being like, go to this website, it's good. And then I spent the rest of the video being like, but also it made me think of this idea that I want to talk about. And then I would just talk about that idea. So a lot of my process is people asking me questions and then me using those questions to either answer them or to come up with ideas for things. Or I just have like a stupid idea of something that makes me laugh that I want to just film really quickly. I have like moments where I really want to film and then moments where I really don't want to film. So if I feel energized to make some videos, I will sort of go out of my way to stop everything that I'm doing to like take advantage of that energy, because I'm very either super energetic in that direction of like, yeah, let's make stuff, and I'll make like 10 videos in a row, or I'll like won't want to make videos for like 3 days. And I'm trying to get better at being more habitual with it, but I'm pretty good at catching the tiger by the tail in those moments. So that's sort of what it's like for now.
No, I've set aside like one day a week where if I feel that's a good creation time, because I'm usually in a creative flow during that time, so I set it aside to create shorts. I noticed that like you have a sporadic upload schedule. You oftentimes will have a short come out while you're streaming. Is that just notifications, or is that a schedule that you choose?
That's just notifications.
So I figured.
I do. Well, it depends. It depends on the short. I often will have a short come out this when I start streaming. So if I'm streaming, let's say I'm doing a show at like 7 at night, I will have a short that ties back into that stream that I will have go on at 6:45 or at 7. Because the first hour and a half or so that a short is up generally is when it gets the most attention. And you can pull a lot of people. It's a good way to get people to like go to your live, or hope that people will go to your live.
What is the most intricate or unexpected plot twist you've ever devised for a campaign? How did your players react?
I have a video that did stupidly well on TikTok. I feel like it has a couple million views. I ran a very successful False Hydra campaign, and I think a lot of people are interested in the False Hydra. And I came up with an idea that I thought was very clever, and it worked really well. I've talked about it a bunch before, but to very briefly describe it, the False Hydra in D&D it's not really a D&D monster. It's like a D&D, it's like an idea for a monster
D&D
that people have been
folklore.
talking about, for a while. And the premise of the monster is that it sort of looks like a Zelda monster, but it's basically like a big plant with a bunch of stalks on it, and at the end of the stalks are like faces. And the monster has two main aspects to it. One is that it is constantly singing, and its song creates this not invisibility, but like lack of perception. So you don't notice it. And the way that it's intended is that this overcomes magic detection, it overcomes investigation, it overcomes invisibility, because it's not that you don't see it, it's that you don't perceive it. I don't know. You can lean into that as much or as little as you want, but it's essentially a big invisible plant. The only time that it becomes visible is when the mouths are eating, because they're not singing. The other thing that it can do is that when it eats something or someone, everyone forgets that person ever existed. They disappear from memory. So as like a hunter, it starts growing in a town and essentially will eat the whole town over a period of time. And because you can't perceive it, and because it memory fades, nobody knows that they're under attack until they're just all gone. So that's like the monster in a nutshell. So the way that I ran it, but it's like, that's a really trippy monster to run. How do you make a monster that feels like you don't see it, or you feels like you don't remember its victims? Like, how do you make players have that sort of experience? So what I did was, when they got to the town that the monster was in, what is it, the false hydra, a little kid ran up to them and was like, "Hey, misters, let me paint your portrait. It'll be 1 silver," or whatever. And they were like, "Okay, fine." So they sat down. He sketched a picture of them really quickly, and it's like, "All right, I'm gonna go color this up. I'll be back tomorrow." And he ran off. And they went on adventuring for a little while. They went through town. They started to notice weird things and mysteries. There were all these shops that were empty, but looked like they should have people in them working at them, or houses that were empty, and everyone just was sort of normal about it. And it was logic defying, where there would be a hot dog stand on the corner, and somebody would be like, "Whose hot dog stand is that?" And they'd be like, "Oh, nobody owns a hot dog stand on the corner. What are you talking about?" There is one there. And they'd be like, "Huh, so there is." And it's just that kind of situation happened a lot. Or on a couple times they saw birds fall out of the sky that looked like they flew into buildings because they crashed into the monster. Stuff like that. And then eventually they went on a little adventure, little journey. They go back to their house, or they go back to the inn. The next day they go to this kid. They get the painting, and they're like, "Cool." And what I did is I had drawn the picture of the party in real life. So I took a big piece of parchment paper, and I do a little bit of art in real life sometimes. So I drew a drawing of the party, and I rolled up the edges really tightly, so it kind of looked like a scroll. And I taped one of the edges down so that it felt like it wasn't supposed to open up all the way. So I gave them the picture, and they were like, "Oh, this is really cool. Oh man, you're such Cinder. You're such a cool dungeon master. High five," or whatever. And then they went on the adventure, and they continued to try to solve the mystery. And eventually they started to put together pieces that there was some sort of creature that was affecting memory. They started to acknowledge that was a thing that was happening. And maybe a session or two later, when everybody was taking a break, I grabbed the drawing that I did, and I took that little piece of tape off so that you could unfold the picture all the way. And when they went back to when the players came back to the table, their characters went back to their room. I described how there was an unusual thing in their room where there were 6 adventurers. This was when I was running a group for a lot of people. There were 6 adventurers, but there were 7 beds, and there were 7 backpacks, and there were 7, there were magic items that they didn't remember getting, and a whole set of gear that nobody knew who it was. And then one of the players, this was my intention, one of the players was playing with the map, sort of fiddling, and they noticed that they could unscroll it more, and that there was a whole part of the picture that they hadn't seen before. And when they unfurled the picture all the way, it revealed that I didn't just draw the 6 adventurers, I drew 7 adventurers. And there was a 7th person in the portrait that I drew. And because of that little subtle thing I did with the tape, they just thought they didn't notice it before. But it really felt like I did a magic trick where I had given them a drawing, and it was one thing. And now they're looking at the drawing again, and it feels like the drawing is something different. It feels like it has changed. And they realized that they had a 7th party member. and they don't know how long that party member's been with them, but that party member has got killed by this monster, and now they just didn't remember it. So they found that party member's journal with some notes about things that they did with you guys in the adventure. They found the party member's magic items, and they had like an illustration of them, but they didn't remember anything about them because it was just like a made up thing that I added in. But by tying it into the map, not the map, tying it into the portrait thing, I think it did a really good job of having the players experience that feeling of what does it feel like to lose a memory because you don't know that you lost that memory. Yeah, so I'm just pretty proud of that. That worked out really well. That was cool. Like the people that I learned D&D from were very much in the position of like your character might die. It's all the time. So that was just sort of the way I ran my game for a long time.
For sure. I know as a player, like from a player perspective, I would be very excited about a plot line like that. Of course, now I would see it straight off the bat and be like, "Oh, I know what's happening."
Yeah, you can't really run a false Hydra for people that are obsessed with D&D.
For sure.
They all have heard of it 1,000 times. You can try to find things that are like that, though, or you can try to create similar-ish situations. There's a couple monsters that I think really lend themselves to, like, very unusual, mind-bendy stuff. The Balhanath, or whatever it's pronounced, there's an aberration that I really like. That's a cool monster like that.
Balhanath. Look that up.
Yeah, it's in, I think it's in, Mordekainen's Tome of Everything, or Mordekainen's Tome of Foes, excuse me. But it's a monster that basically can reshape the physical world around it at will. It can't use it to hurt you, but it can use it to like make buildings or forests or mazes very, very quickly. And it has a innate ability to it has two things going for it. It kind of understands what you want as like a character, and its area exudes a mind-altering effect that makes it feel like you're going in the right direction. So like the monster is designed for the players, for the dungeon masters to kind of gaslight the players a little bit.
As you were telling the story, I had a memorable moment come up in my brain with that same group, like one of the first ones that I ran from level 1 to 20, very high stakes all the time. They were in a domain of dread called Blitzper. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's illithid flavored.
No. Okay.
So there was this song I found on YouTube that I played every time we were in that area, and we started the game there and then continued on until like level 10, I think. So every session I would start the session with this creepy music. One of the mist keys for Blitzper that can pull you back in is memories, traumatic memories of the location. So if you like fall asleep and have a nightmare of this place, you can be pulled back into it. And they were aware of this. So like they took great precautions with protection from good and evil, hollow, a bunch of different spells to make sure they were safe at any given time. And then they slipped up one time. And I turned on the music. They had been out of the domain for like 10 sessions, I think. And I turned on that music, and instantly there was a response from all of my players like, "Oh no, we fucked up, gang. We stayed at the tavern and we really should not have." They had a flying pyramid. They really should not have fucking stayed in the tavern, you know?
That's very funny.
Like level 17 with a flying pyramid? Yeah.
You could also use the dream spell to really fuck with people then.
I think that's what I had at the time, was the idea that this God Brain was using, just essentially using the dream spell, but also they could try to pull you back with a failed saving throw, you know?
Yeah, but if anybody dreams, I mean, like, I could make you go there. Like, if you have the dream spell, you could just do that to people.
Oh, that's true. Like an evil necromancer trying to just fuck people over. Like, hey.
Or one of the players trying to fuck over an NPC that they don't want to have to deal with.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I don't know. I appreciate when people like that. My players
pretty
don't
extreme,
love that.
And I know that.
My players don't like that kind of stuff that much. So I try to stay away from things that take away player agency, unless they're very specific.
For sure. And that's what horror is, I believe, is taking away player agency in a strategic way that is fun.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
Thrilling,
that makes sense.
Looking into the future, I know we talked about this a little. Are there any projects that you haven't tackled yet, but have like a glimmer in your mind? What is your dream project?
I want to run a game of D&D where the people that play in it are all the most famous people in the D&D world, except for one person who's just a friend of mine. And I am really, really mean. I'm a genuinely bad dungeon master to all the famous people, and a very only trying to uplift the person that's not a famous person. I think that'd be so funny.
Why?
I think it'd be so funny. Imagine how upset people would get with me. It would be
It
so
does
good.
sound very funny, and if like the creators are in on the joke, I think they'd be into it. Like, here we are, Matthew Mercer, Abria Iyengar, Brennan Lee Mulligan, and my friend Steve from second grade.
Yeah, exactly. And whenever Matt tries to talk, I'd be like, "Shh, no, it's not your
Steve's
turn."
talking, Matthew. Can you just
Yeah,
hold on a second?
yeah. So doing something like that, I think would be a lot of fun. It would make so many people upset. 'Cause the thing is, if people didn't get the joke, they'd be upset. But even if people did get the joke, they'd be upset because they'd be like, "You wasted this opportunity." Yeah, I don't know. I'd like to try to. I'd like to try to present it in a way where it is unclear where the reality ends and the fiction begins.
That is another skill that you have is that messing with the meta of your own content, right?
You have
Moving
to
that
do that.
line. I guess
Yeah.
so. What is
Well, you don't
real and
have to
what's
do that,
not?
but I have to do that. I think it's fun.
No, for sure it is, and I enjoy that part of your content. I try to think how I can apply something like that to my own content without being super fucking cringe, and
It's
uh,
hard to do. It's
it's
hard
hard to
to
do.
do.
Yeah.
I'm pretty cringy with it sometimes. I think the key is to not make a big deal out of it. Like, I don't know if you notice, but whenever I talk, whenever, especially if I'm talking about like Eldridge stuff, I don't ever bring it up. I only bring it up in response to other people bringing it up. If I do bring it up, it'll be me bringing it up because I'll use a word, and somebody's like, "Why did he say that?" And then I'll answer why. I'll answer that question, but I move on from it very quickly. I don't spend a lot of time focusing on it. One of the easiest ways to do something silly and have it not be cringy, or do any sort of joke and have it not be cringy, is to know when to stop making the joke, when to turn the spotlight away. And the amount of times that, like, I mean, I see it in videos all the time. I see it in shorts all the time that people make. Um, off Oftentimes something becomes cringy because you spent 3 seconds too long talking about it, or 10 seconds too long talking about it, or a minute too long talking about it. A lot of stuff I think is very funny as like a throwaway joke, but as soon as you shine a spotlight on it and your guys look at this throwaway joke I'm making, it becomes not funny anymore.
That is something that I will have to deeply ponder. Because as somebody who is a famous joke killer, like, oh yeah, I understand I could stop the joke at the funny part. I choose to keep going.
Yeah, but that's not.
It's not funny. Yeah.
Then the question
It's
you
not
have to
as
ask
fun.
yourself is, well, it might be funny if it's funny for you. Like, what's you have to ask yourself what the point is. You know, if the point is you having fun and you don't care what anybody else thinks, then it doesn't matter. If
Personal
the point
fulfillment
is
versus entertainment.
if the point is entertainment, then the question is you not caring and pushing the joke past itself, is that entertaining? And for sometimes it is. There's a lot of meta comedy out there, you know, like Adult Swim humor type stuff that lands really well that does exactly that. But there's also a lot that doesn't. I think that's really hard to do though. It's a very like the joke of pushing the joke a is either it either works or it doesn't, and there's nothing in between. Um, yeah, but like a lot of the time, I'll do that because I think it's funny, and I just don't care what other people think. But I feel like most of the time, especially if it's the more like I don't know, the more meta cringy type stuff, I try to be very brief with it, very brief, because the more you talk about it, the less funny it becomes, or the less like strange it becomes. It becomes too obvious that it's like intentional, that you're building towards something, or that you're like, you know, that it's a bit. As soon as something is obviously a bit and the goal is for it to be a little bit weird and meta, then you lose a lot of the power, I think.
Have you ever heard of a game called Coyote and Crow?
No, but I've never heard of anything.
Well, they're doing the Native November thing, and it's a TTRPG that like colonization didn't happen. A giant meteor hit England like before any of that shit could take root, and it just never happened.
Huh.
So it's
All right.
very it has like a cyberpunk aesthetic to it.
That's cool.
But I'm not trying to plug anything. I'm not paid or anything. But Start Playing Games is doing a thing where they're teaching dungeon masters how to run it over the next couple months.
Oh, that's cool. Are you going to learn how to run it?
Yeah, I just got my code. That's why I brought it up, because I just got a message like, "Hey, here's your code for the PDF," and blah blah blah.
That's fun. It's a brand new system.
It's been out for a little while now, but I think they're just now pushing it out. They're doing a thing with Hero Forge, but I have a friend who just did a actual play. He was just recently allowed to announce it and stuff, so I'll probably post it in the promotion in Discord.
That's very fun.
But yeah, exciting stuff. I'm going to learn this new system, and it's very RP oriented, so it's storytelling instead of like combat is a last resort, and there is a good chance you will die if you initiate combat because like someone's going to die. That's how it goes.
So it's a little Call of Cthulhu in that way.
Well, it's less that. It's more like, hey, don't fight because it's dangerous. But there are ways to push forward the story without combat, you know? But also, like, combat is an option because that's a thing that exists. Thoughts, feelings, aspirations?
Oh, God damn it. But you fucking stealing my lines now.
Hey, listen, I got a comment today that was like, oh, you know CinderBlocksally, now here's CinderBrickSally. I'm like, come on, man. That's not very creative bullying.
I don't think is that bullying, or is that just acknowledging the inspiration?
Yeah, for sure. No, I get so many comments straight up just like, hey, you're a content thief. I'm like, thanks for watching, guy. Have a good day.
I don't think you're a content thief, if that makes you feel better. I do think that if you don't want that to happen, you should start to try to think about
branching out.
Not even branching out, but like, what's the spin you're going to put on it? So like, for example, what I do with my videos where I have my head bouncing around the screen, I got that idea from comic book guys, and they didn't have their head bouncing around the screen in a bunch of different angles. They just had it in the same spot, sort of getting bigger or smaller depending on the background image. But I was like, that's so smart. I don't need to have anything set up. I can just have my head. And if I bounce my head around the screen, it'll be funnier. So I think that the question that you have to ask yourself is, if you do want to do the head bouncing around the screen, is how do you make it yours? What do you add to the piece of the puzzle that makes it feel like you are this is you putting your imprint on the thing? Or just don't give a fuck what people say and don't worry about it.
Just
or whatever. Yeah,
I think I'm gonna try to lean more into the voices with everything, because I often forget that's a skill that I have. So
yeah, or like the other thing, like as we mentioned earlier, fuck the comments. Like, who cares? Like,
for sure,
it's one of those things where if your goal is in any way to become a content creator, you are going to have shitty comments.
No,
they just come. They're just it's just a part of the game. I think the idea. I think the just deleting comments and banning people, totally reasonable. I do it all the time. I delete, probably 2 or 3 comments a day minimum, and I hide people from the channel all the time. I have no shame about it. It takes so much less emotional energy to hide someone from the channel than it does to like engage them in conversation.
For sure.
I will say that quite regularly I will happen upon very large creators making a video that I read essentially the same thing that they're saying in the video at some point over the past week on Reddit. Like somebody posted some idea on some D&D subreddit, the post blew up, and then like a week or 2 later you see content creators just basically reflavoring the ideas to their own. So it's a pretty common thing, I think.
No, I have seen that a lot actually. As a frequenter of Reddit. I have a beard on my neck, in fact.
Yeah. So it's like, I think that it is first of all, I think it's totally okay to do that sort of thing. And I think the way to counter to the way to push back against it, people being like, actually, is to change the idea enough to make it your own. That's really the only thing. It does any or just don't care. Just be like, fuck you, audience. You still watched it.
You still watched it. Hey, go fuck yourself.
You still made the number go up for me, my guy.
This was a lot of fun. This was enjoyable. I'm a little.
Yeah, man. Thanks for inviting me on. I appreciate being invited onto the show.
Well, good luck.
Well, thank you, and thank you for letting me be your first guest. It's a wonderful thing.
And for those looking for more CinderBlocksally content, you can check out his Twitch in the doobly-doo. Until next time, goodbye.